They sat me by the kitchen. Not at the table, not even at the end near the kids, but behind a folding curtain, beside a metal catering cart that squeaked with every pass. Every time the servers brought out another course, bruschetta, Caesar salad, lukewarm pasta, I had to press my knees together so they could roll by. I was practically in the service corridor. My chair was different too. Plastic. Lower than the rest. I had to sit up unnaturally straight to see over the edge of the tablecloth. It was my mother-in-law's birthday. 65 years old, celebrated at an overpriced private dining room in Duluth, Minnesota. I paid for the venue. I booked the Airbnb where half of them were staying. I even bought the statement candles his sister insisted on, and the $190 worth of flowers no one thanked me for. And still, there I sat in the shadows, next to the buffet line, while they laughed in the golden light. My husband, Tyler Reed, stood at the head of the table in a pressed blazer. He was never one for speeches until there was an audience. He tapped his glass dramatically, just enough to make the kids stop whispering. "Let's all raise a glass," he said. His voice was loud, performative. To Mom. And to, and the frugal one. Always counting every penny. Laughter. Too much laughter. Even his mother, the woman I had bought the pearl earrings for, chuckled behind her napkin. His niece, the one who thinks content creation is a career, lifted her phone. "Wait, do it again, Uncle Ty." She filmed the toast. The camera panned toward me briefly, catching my forced smile. I didn't raise my glass. "She should be grateful she's even invited," someone muttered down the table. I wasn't sure who said it. One of his sisters, probably. Or maybe the niece's boyfriend, the one I'd helped co-sign a car loan for last summer. The one who never says thank you. No one corrected them. No one looked my way. I wasn't just ignored, I was erased. When dessert came, they brought out a cake I'd ordered myself. Coconut cream, her favorite. I'd even called the bakery twice to confirm they used lactose-free milk. They lit candles, sang loudly, posed again. And then, just one photo without end, okay? They didn't say it cruelly. That was the worst part, it was casual, like I was some extra in the scene who needed to be moved for symmetry. I stepped aside. I stood near the doorway, out of frame, watching as they arranged themselves perfectly in the light I had paid for, around the table I had reserved, in a home I had cleaned for their arrival. My dress, a simple navy sheath I'd bought on sale, suddenly felt too plain. I crossed my arms, then uncrossed them. I smiled politely. A server passed by and said softly, "Do you need anything?" Just a different life, I thought. But I said, "No, thank you." That night, in a roadside motel that smelled like wet carpet and bleach, I lay on the stiff bed, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone like they do in the movies. I just opened my banking app. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe humiliation triggers a reflex in women like me. Check the numbers. Make sure you're still in control of something. The screen took a moment to load. Then the numbers blinked into view. $9,800, transfer to relative. $1,250, rent for cousin. $349, internet for niece. They weren't new charges. They were recurring. Scheduled. Predictable. Like I was a utility service for people I'd never met. I clicked into the transactions. Each payment linked to an address in Minneapolis. North Loop, a luxury complex I recognized from Tyler's browsing history. He once said a coworker had moved there. When I asked which one, he shrugged. "You don't know her." Her. The name on the lease was mine. And Reed. My social, my bank card. The payer on the utility account was me. But I hadn't signed anything. I'd never been to that building. I didn't even know what floor it was on. I dug deeper, opening each payment one by one, following the trail like breadcrumbs leading me out of my own life. There were photos in the payment descriptions, apartment photos. New furniture. A wine rack. A custom rug. I knew that rug. I had pinned it years ago to our shared design board for the house. Tyler had said, "It's too loud for the living room." Apparently not too loud for her. I clicked on a comment under furniture payment, for Haley Redhart. Haley. I scrolled back through our family group chat. His cousin Haley lived in Michigan. Married, 3 kids. This wasn't that Haley. This was someone else entirely. I opened Tyler's contacts. There she was, H, cousin. No last name. Same number linked to the internet bill. Same address as the rent charge. Same initials, different woman. Suddenly, the evening's cruelty had a shape. It wasn't random, and it wasn't just mean-spirited family dynamics. It was targeted. It was subtraction. They weren't pushing me to the edge, they were making space. For someone else. The jokes, the glances, the sudden absence of affection, it all made sense. Tyler had already moved me out of the picture. First emotionally, then financially. That night, when he toasted to me being frugal, they laughed because they knew the punchline. The frugal one had been paying for someone else's apartment. I closed the app. My hands didn't tremble. My breathing didn't hitch. There would be no fight tonight. No confrontation. No screaming match in a motel parking lot. That wasn't my style. That wasn't what this moment called for. No, this required something else. Steps. Cold, clean, quiet steps. If they had shoved me behind the curtain for the aesthetic, then it was time to show them what happens when the woman funding the production walks out of the theater. Let them sit there, perfectly posed, while the lights went out and the check never arrived. Because I wasn't just moving on. I was disappearing on purpose. And this time, it wouldn't be silent. I didn't sleep. I watched the motel room clock blink from 3 a.m. to 4 o'clock, then 5 o'clock, each minute a slow burn beneath my ribs. Tyler didn't text. He didn't ask where I was or why I'd left the Airbnb early. Because he knew. They all did. They watched me move aside last night, watched it like choreography. He toasted. They laughed. I vanished. Curtain down. At 6:10 a.m., I checked out. The front desk clerk gave me a receipt I didn't need and said, "Have a nice day," without meeting my eyes. I didn't respond. The sky was metal gray as I drove back to Minneapolis, every mile shedding skin I didn't realize I'd been wearing. By the time I reached the city, I had no tears, no scripts, no more rehearsals of what I might say. Only steps. Only facts. I parked in the hospital garage where I used to work night shifts, 15 years of overnights, of coming home to warm up Tyler's dinner, of showering quietly so I wouldn't wake him. I walked into the old staff lounge and poured burnt coffee into a styrofoam cup. It tasted like history and exhaustion, but it anchored me. Then I opened my laptop. First, spreadsheets. I had documented our budget since year 3 of the marriage, initially out of frugality, later out of habit, and finally out of fear. The file opened like muscle memory. Bank transfers, auto pay, rent Minneapolis Unit 312. It had started 6 months ago. I traced every transaction. Utilities. Internet. Amazon orders sent to North Loop. Always billed under and read. Always processed through the joint account. I cross-referenced it all with my password manager, a tool Tyler refused to use. In the notes section for our bank login, I had recorded an old address he once used for a magazine subscription. The same North Loop complex. The same floor. Unit 312. I Googled the building. Lofts with floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick, executive amenities. Rent, $2,750 per month. A wine cellar. Pet-friendly. We didn't have pets. We didn't even have wine in the house anymore. He'd said he outgrew the taste. Apparently not. On the building's Instagram, I found her. Not tagged, but visible. Blurred in the background of a community photo. A rooftop yoga session. Black leggings, long auburn hair. Smiling at someone off camera. Next to her, a man in sunglasses. I knew that posture, relaxed, smug. Tyler. Even blurred, I recognized the casual lean, the arm just slightly around her waist. Haley. Not a cousin. A kept woman. At 8:17 a.m., I logged into our cell plan account and checked usage. Tyler had labeled her H, cousin, but the minutes told a different story. Late-night calls, voice notes, and texts that spiked on weekends, exactly when he told me he was visiting his mom. His mother lived 5 blocks from us. She didn't need a weekend visit. But Haley did. By 9 o'clock, I had a folder on my desktop labeled Exit Blueprint. Inside, screech asterisk TS of every charge. Names. Dates. The PDF of our mortgage in my name only. The prenup, scanned from a dusty folder I'd buried behind the winter coats. A clause highlighted in pale yellow. In the event of proven infidelity or financial misrepresentation, all properties and assets in the name of and Reed shall remain solely hers. He'd signed it on our wedding day, joking, "You're the frugal one, not me." What would I ever take? I added the clause to a Word doc. I titled it, Assets to Protect. I didn't confront him. Instead, I made 3 calls. 1. The bank. "Hello, I'd like to freeze all external transfers on my account. Are you suspecting fraud?" "Yes. Long-term, consistent fraud under my name. Would you like to issue a new card?" "Yes." "And remove the joint user." They asked for Tyler's name. I spelled it slowly. 2. The utility company. "There's a contract at 401 North Loop, Unit 312, under and Reed." "Yes, ma'am. That's what's on file." "It's fraudulent. Suspend all services immediately. Email me confirmation." Click. 3. The property management office. "My identity has been used to open a lease without my consent. I need copies of the application and all signed forms. Ma'am, for privacy. I am the name on the lease. You're about to find out how little privacy exists for fraud." By noon, the utilities were suspended, the lease documents were en route, and my card was canceled. By 12:03 p.m., Tyler's phone was lighting up. He texted, "Hey, did something happen with the account? Haley says the lights are out." I replied, "Who?" "You know, Haley, my cousin." "I have no cousins living in properties I pay for." Pause. "It's not what you think. It's worse than I think." At 12:16 p.m., he called. I didn't answer. At 12:18 p.m., he left a voicemail. "Babe, this is getting out of hand. You're blowing things up for no reason. This is family stuff." I was helping her out while she looked for work. She didn't need work. She had my bank account. At 1 p.m., I forwarded every document to my lawyer, a quiet woman named Sheila who'd once helped me draft my will. The subject line, identity theft and prenup activation. No explanation. Just attachments. At 2:07 p.m., I removed Tyler's name from the backup contact on my phone plan. I changed every password. Gmail. Amazon. The Costco card. Spotify. I locked him out of every household account I had set up for us. By 4:15 p.m., the North Loop account was officially flagged for fraud. At 5 p.m., I received the lease application PDF. The signature on it was mine or someone's version of it. Sloppy, curved where mine was sharp. Misspelled. And Reed. A child's forgery. That evening, he finally came home. He walked through the door like nothing had changed, except his shoulders were tighter, his phone was clenched in his hand, and he didn't make eye contact. "Everything okay?" he asked. I nodded. "You tell me." He hesitated. "Haley's panicking. I told her you'd help fix it." "I'm not helping your girlfriend, Tyler." His face froze. I saw the bills. I saw the address. I saw the photos. He opened his mouth to lie. I saw it, the reflex. Then he closed it. The lie wouldn't land. Not anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just walked past him and placed a thick manila envelope on the kitchen counter. It was labeled, N's copy. Inside were the screech asterisk TS, the lease, the forged signature, and a handwritten list of every transaction he'd billed to me. "Consider this your severance package," I said. "The job of husband has been terminated." He said nothing, just stared. I stared back. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even rage. It was math. It was subtraction. It was finally removing myself from the equation where I was always the silent variable. He whispered, "I thought you'd never look." That was the problem. I did. I looked. And now I was leaving. The first thing I felt the next morning was stillness. Not peace. Not quiet. But a dangerous, perfect stillness, like the air before a tornado. Tyler was gone. His side of the bed was cold, untouched. Maybe he never came back. Or maybe he had, tiptoed through the dark, seen the envelope again, and understood there was nothing left to say. I showered, made coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened the laptop again. Not to revisit the past, I had all the evidence I needed. Now it was about formalizing the exit. 3 calls. That's what I told myself. Just 3 calls and everything shifts. Call 1, the bank. Good morning, this is Sheila, customer support. I was calm. Clinical. I need to finalize the fraud investigation. I've already submitted the lease agreement, forged signature, and transaction trail. Yes, Mrs. Reed. We've reviewed your documentation. Your identity was clearly used without consent. We've flagged the associated account as fraudulent and reversed 3 pending transactions. A new debit card will arrive within 5 business days. Remove the joint user, I added. Of course. Mr. Tyler Reed's access has been revoked. I thanked her. Voice flat. Efficient. Not a single tremor. She paused before hanging up. If I may, Mrs. Reed, most people sound devastated when they call us about fraud. You sound very prepared. I am, I said. And hung up. Call 2, the utility company. They were harder to reach. I waited on hold for 12 minutes while some instrumental loop played a lullaby version of Fleetwood Mac. Finally, someone picked up. Thank you for holding. How can I assist you today? My name is Reed. I need confirmation that service has been suspended for an address opened fraudulently under my name. Address? 401, North Loop Boulevard, Unit 312. A pause. Clicking. Yes, ma'am. All utilities were terminated yesterday evening. We also flagged the account for identity misuse. Someone tried to call this morning to reopen it, a woman named Haley Brooks. She claimed to be your assistant. I smiled into the phone. I don't have an assistant. She insisted she had permission, but we denied the request. We'll be sending a written confirmation to your home address. Good, I said. Do not release any information to anyone other than me. Yes, ma'am. I hung up before she could say anything else. Before she could ask how a woman's life becomes so tangled that her husband's mistress thinks she can impersonate her and open utilities on her behalf. Call 3, the property manager. This one mattered most. Maple and Ridge Properties. This is Landon. Hi, I need to speak with the manager regarding a fraudulent lease under my name. Let me transfer you. Click. Then, this is Celeste, property manager at North Loop. How can I help? My name is Reed. I'm calling about Unit 312. My name was used to lease that apartment. I never authorized it. I've obtained a copy of the application, and the signature is forged. Long pause. We're aware of the issue, she said carefully. You're not the first person to call us this week about identity problems. We take this seriously. Then you'll confirm, in writing, that the lease is considered invalid due to identity theft? We're working with our legal team to issue a notice of breach of lease. The occupant has 30 days to vacate. I laughed, dry, bitter. You think they'll wait for the deadline? She hesitated. We've also received multiple complaints from other tenants. Parties. Noise. Strange behavior. If anything escalates, we'll accelerate the eviction process. Good, I said. Because the person living there is not just a stranger. She's been living under my name while sleeping with my husband. Celeste didn't respond. You might want to sanitize the place when she's gone, I added. And double-check whose card is being used at the building's wine bar. I've seen those charges, too. I hung up. 3 calls. 3 shifts. I sat back in the chair, still holding my coffee, now lukewarm. The wind outside pushed the curtain in and out like a breath, and for the first time in weeks, I heard my own thoughts clearly. Tyler had tried to build a second life. A parallel version of our marriage, one with wine and whispered names, hidden photos, and bills disguised as favors. And he used me to fund it. Not just the money. He used my silence, my work ethic, my predictable habits, my reluctance to fight. He'd wagered I wouldn't notice until it was too late. That I'd ask questions gently or not at all. But I wasn't asking anymore. I was erasing. At noon, I posted a single photo on Facebook. It wasn't of Tyler. Or Haley. Or the apartment. It was a scan of a check, $12,000, signed by me, with the caption blurred and cropped. No explanation. No context. I left it up without comment. By 2:17 p.m., the family thread exploded. His sister messaged first, "What is this? Are you okay?" His mother, "Please don't air family business online." Tyler, "What are you doing? You're ruining everything." I replied to all of them, "No. I'm stopping it." Then I silenced the group chat. Blocked 3 numbers. Logged out. At 3:45 p.m. A delivery arrived, a bouquet of carnations. Grocery store cheap. Pink and white. No card. I threw them directly into the trash. At 4:10 p.m., I logged into Tyler's corporate email account. He had given me access years ago when I helped him organize receipts for a tax return. I'd never used it since. But the password hadn't changed. I composed a brief email. Subject, corporate card concern. To HR@Randaland Partners. Calm. Body. I believe there may be discrepancies in corporate card usage under the name Tyler Reed. Attached are 4 transactions made to a residential property, a wine bar, and furniture deliveries not aligned with business expenses. Attached are *TS with timestamps. I trust your department will handle accordingly. And Reed. No threats. No emotion. Just facts. Just consequences. That evening I opened the red folder. Not the real one, I'd already digitized it. The actual one was now a PDF stored on 3 devices and backed up twice in the cloud. Inside, the prenup, the lease with the forged signature, the police report filed for identity theft, the utility termination letter, and a spreadsheet titled Reimbursement Ledger. It included every dollar spent over the last 9 months that I could trace directly to Haley. $9,800, transfer labeled Relative Emergency. $1,250, rent for Unit 312. $349, internet for Unit 312. $3,100, furniture delivery. $886, vehicle insurance under Haley Brooks. $420, wine subscription. I didn't make a scene. I made a case. One day, maybe he'd try to talk his way out of it. Maybe Haley would cry on social media about privacy and cancellations and being misunderstood. Maybe his family would spin it all as a misunderstanding between spouses. But that wouldn't matter. Because by the time they realized I wasn't coming back, I'd already changed the locks, frozen the accounts, documented every charge, and we *P***nized every receipt. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a blueprint. A slow, surgical removal of myself from the life they'd built on my name. The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was recoil. Like the air had been punched and was still figuring out how to return to stillness. Tyler stopped coming home. He didn't call. He didn't email. But he watched. I could see it in the digital footprints he didn't know I knew how to trace. Failed login attempts on the bank app. A notification from our security system. User Tyler Guest. Attempted access. Denied. He was trying to slip back in through the cracks. But the house had changed. The access had changed. And I had changed. I spent the next few days doing what no one ever expects the wife to do, an audit. Not emotional. Financial. I opened the folder titled Joint Expenses, a master document I had created in the first year of our marriage, back when we were still splitting dinners and talking about equity like equals. The spreadsheet opened like an old wound. There it all was, every row a quiet betrayal. Wine tasting, $420. He told me it was a client event. But I remembered that day. He'd come home flushed, tipsy, smelling like a woman's perfume, a scent I couldn't place at the time. Not mine. Not laundry. Something floral and invasive. Cousin's renovation, $3,100. He said, Haley's place needed repairs. It's just for a month. 1 month had become 6. The renovation included an Italian sink I'd once bookmarked for our bathroom remodel. Nephew's car insurance, $886. Except the policy listed a vehicle registered to Haley Brooks. Not his nephew. Not even his family. Miscellaneous reimbursements, $2,650. Scattered across odd entries, spa days, boutique receipts, tech gadgets. always under ambiguous labels: consulting needs, digital accessories, urgent health. There was no nephew, no cousin in need, just a man laundering betrayal through the language of family. I color-coded every charge: red for confirmed fraud, yellow for suspicious, green for shared expenses. The spreadsheet bled red. Then I went further back, to year 12. The first time I noticed the numbers didn't quite line up. Back then, I thought it was an accounting error, a missed receipt. I blamed myself. But it wasn't error. It was erosion. A long, deliberate siphoning. Every quiet favor was a lie. Every "can you cover this?" was a test of how invisible I'd let myself become. And I passed. Every time. At 8 p.m. I posted the spreadsheet. Not publicly, not yet. I uploaded it to a shared family folder labeled estate planning. That folder had been created by Tyler's sister 3 years ago when his mother's health started failing. It was filled with birth certificates, scanned passports, vaccination records, wills, all the paperwork of people who like to pretend they're organized while hiding rot under the floorboards. I added the file as an_read_ledger. PDF. No explanation. Just the numbers. Just my name. Within 15 minutes, my phone buzzed. Tyler's mother: "What is this?" Tyler's sister: "You're making things worse." Tyler: "Finally. This isn't helping anyone." I replied once. It helped me. At 9:34 p.m. Someone tried to delete the file. They failed. I had locked the permissions. At 10:12 p.m. I received an email from Tyler's niece. "Hey, Aunt Anne. I just wanted to say, I saw the file. I'm sorry. I didn't know how much you were paying for. None of us did." I didn't respond. Guilt wasn't currency, and it couldn't repay what had been taken. At 11 p.m. the doorbell rang. I didn't move. Let it ring. 10 minutes later, a delivery notification buzzed my phone. Floral delivery completed. I waited. I opened the door. A plastic-wrapped bouquet of pink carnations. Grocery store stems. Brown-edged petals. No card. Straight to the trash. That night, I opened my email and drafted a message to Randall & Partners' HR department. Subject: potential corporate misuse. Tyler Reed. Body: Dear HR. As a concerned party with access to financial documentation, I'm sharing a record of personal purchases potentially charged to a corporate card. These include residential expenses, non-business alcohol purchases, and unrelated utility bills, with dates and amounts attached. I trust you will handle this in accordance with your internal protocols. Sincerely. And Reed. I didn't CC Tyler. I didn't warn him. I attached the file and hit send. Then I shut the laptop and turned off the lights. No drama. No screaming. Just distance. The next morning I returned to the dresser. Not for clothes. For the red folder. It was heavier than I remembered. Inside, mortgage papers. Insurance forms. My old medical directives. And, tucked behind them, our prenuptial agreement, signed 12 years ago, notarized, pristine. I flipped to page 6. There it was. In the event of proven infidelity or financial harm, all property titled under and Reed remains hers. This includes, but is not limited to, the marital home, vehicle titles, retirement accounts, and any shared investments where her name is primary. Signed, Tyler James Reed. Witnessed, Melissa Clark. Stamped with a notary seal from Hennepin County. He'd signed it in a cafe, joking that it was all formalities. "I'm not going anywhere," he'd said. He was right. He didn't go anywhere. He just brought her in. Also in the folder, a letter from the credit bureau, dated 3 days ago. "A new lease has been opened under your name. Address: North Loop, Unit 312. The attached signature, and Reed. Spelled wrong. Typed. No handwritten match. Another bill, internet. Payer, and Reed. Recipient: Haley Brooks. Our names side by side. Like co-owners. Like accomplices." But I didn't cry. I scanned everything. Uploaded it to a private folder labeled litigation, prepared. I renamed the PDF, red folder_final. PDF. That folder was no longer a stack of paper. It was evidence. And soon, it would be leverage. The next morning, Tyler finally texted. "Can we talk? This has gone too far." I replied, "We passed too far months ago. You just didn't feel it until the lights went out." I didn't answer his text. I let it rot on the screen, one of those ghost messages people reread when they realize no one is coming back. Instead, I spent the morning reclaiming the house, not redecorating, not making a show of it, just reclaiming. His achievement plaques in the hallway, boxed. His trophies, medals from some community triathlon 10 years ago, boxed. That hideous framed quote he loved, "Discipline is remembering what you want most," gone. Into a bin marked donations. Let some stranger inherit his nonsense. I went to the garage and unplugged his old beer fridge. Emptied it. Cleaned it. The hum stopped, and for the first time in years, the space felt quiet. I scrubbed the oil stains from where he used to park and watched them fade like bruises finally healing. I didn't cry. I didn't pause. Grief has a script. But this wasn't grief. This was an autopsy. When I performed with gloves on and the lights fully up. At noon, I walked through the house, not as the wife keeping it tidy, not as the caretaker of his preferences. I walked through it as the owner. And I was. The title was in my name. The prenup had made sure of it. And now, the house was mine in the way it had never really been, not just on paper, but in atmosphere. The walls no longer echoed with his demands. The floors didn't groan under his weight. The furniture didn't look like it was waiting for him to come home and fill the silence. Dinner that night was exactly what I liked: lemon butter pasta, roasted tomatoes, caramelized garlic. He always complained that garlic lingered. Tonight I made extra. I set the table with a sunflower blue cloth I'd bought years ago but never used. "Too bright," he'd said. I let it spill over the edges like sunlight. I poured a glass of red wine, the kind he'd scoffed at. "Too fruity." I drank it slowly, letting the warmth spread through my chest. Then I made a list. Not of tasks. Not of chores. Of people who saw me. Claire from work. Mr. Hendricks, the neighbor who brought my trash bins in when I was sick. Dina from the bookstore, who always saved me first editions. Nurse Janet, who used to bring me soup during flu season. Real names. Real allies. Not borrowed family. Not people who called me tight or cold behind my back while cashing checks I didn't remember signing. I texted Claire, "Dinner Friday? I'm reclaiming my table." She replied in seconds, "Absolutely. Want me to bring wine or stories?" Both. That night, I slept in the center of the bed for the first time in years. I didn't wake up to a man grunting in his sleep. I didn't shift to accommodate someone else's snoring or rolling or reaching. I woke up rested. I woke up alone. But it didn't feel empty. It felt mine. The next morning, I went to my email and drafted a document titled Final Separation Ledger. It wasn't legal yet, we hadn't even spoken face to face, but it felt necessary. It was a list of every action I'd taken since discovering the truth. Bank accounts separated. Corporate card misuse reported. Utility services suspended. Fraudulent lease documented. Identity theft filed. Family group chat left. Red folder compiled. Prenup clause activated. I printed it. Slid it into the physical red folder. On the tab, I added a label. For when he asks for closure. At 3 p.m., my doorbell rang. He was on the porch, wrinkled t-shirt, hollow eyes, and a grocery store bag in his hand. Cheap wine. As if a $12 Pinot Noir could pave over the crater he dug. And, he said, "Can we talk without making a scene?" "Without scenes, with paperwork," I replied. I didn't let him past the kitchen. I set the red folder on the table like a wee asterisk p asterisk n. He sat down. The way a man sits when he knows something's coming but still believes he can soften it. As if charm could still work. He opened the folder. Flipped through the pages. The police report. The lease. The bill with Haley's name under service recipient. And then the prenup. His face went pale. "I was helping her," he muttered. "She's family. She needed. She's your girlfriend. Not your cousin." He opened his mouth to protest. I held up my hand. I saw the photos. I traced the payments. I matched the phone records. "Don't insult me with another lie." Silence. Then, with gall, he tried, "I'll pay you back." I tilted my head. "You won't have to." "I already did," to myself. He blinked. "I closed every account. Froze every card. Called your HR. They're reviewing your expenses. I locked the insurance. Took your name off the car." He tried to laugh, one of those fake, self-deprecating chuckles. "You've really gone full CIA, haven't you?" I handed him a key. The one he used to have to the house. "Here. You won't need it anymore." He looked at it like it might burn him. "Anne, you used to say I was your world," I said. He nodded. His eyes softened. I almost saw tears. "You were," he whispered. I leaned back. "Now I'm mine." He didn't speak again. I watched him walk to the door. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't fight. He knew better. When the door clicked shut behind him, the house didn't groan. It didn't creak like it always did when he left, like it was trying to hold on to him. This time, it exhaled. Like it was relieved. I took the red folder and slid it into the top drawer of my desk. Not hidden. Not buried. Just placed. Like a reminder. Not of what he did, but of what I survived. After Tyler left, I didn't touch anything for a full hour. I just sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd served hundreds of dinners he half-complimented, where I'd balanced checkbooks while he watched TV, where I'd once thought we'd grow old together, him reading the paper, me refilling his coffee. Now it was just me. The table had space. The air was quiet. The coffee stayed warm because no one was talking over it. I got up slowly and walked through the house. Room by room. Not checking, not tidying, surveying. The living room first. His leather recliner, the one he insisted we needed for his back, sat like a monument to passivity. I'd always hated it. The color was too dark. It absorbed every bit of light in the room. Like him. I didn't hesitate. I listed it on Craigslist as used recliner, heavy history included. Price, free. First come, first haul. By evening it was gone. Next, the bookshelves. I pulled every novel I'd bought that he never read. Every travel guide he once said we'd use for that Italy trip, which became a running joke until it just stopped being funny. I boxed them all up. Then I dusted off the titles I loved, the poetry, the cookbooks, the worn copies of Alice Munro and Adrienne Rich. I lined them up where his business magazines used to be. A man named Tyler used to live here, I thought. But not anymore. Then the bedroom. I pulled down the framed photos of weddings, vacations, birthdays, all moments that, in hindsight, were more mine than his. I laid them face down on the bed, stared at the backs of them like they might confess something they hadn't said in the frame. They didn't. I packed them away. Above the bed, a painting I'd always wanted but never bought because we already had too much on the walls. I ordered it that night, a woman in profile, strong lines, quiet defiance. When it arrived, I hung it myself, drilling the hole without measuring. Just centered by instinct. It was perfect. The bathroom was easier. His razor, his cologne, that awful soap that smelled like motor oil, all gone. The drawers looked clean, like they'd just woken up from a long coma. I bought lavender soap. Eucalyptus shampoo. Soft towels and pale cream. Luxuries I used to skip because it all washes off anyway. He said that once when I brought home scented lotion. Why spend so much on something that disappears? Because I'm allowed to like what disappears, Tyler. Because softness doesn't have to justify itself. By the weekend, the house looked like someone else had moved in. But it was still me. Just surfaced. Just no longer dimmed. On Sunday, I opened the windows wide and let the cold October air push through. I played Norah Jones loud. The scent of garlic and lemon drifted out into the street. I imagined someone walking by and thinking, whoever lives there must love their life. They wouldn't know how long it took me to make that true. I pulled out a notebook and began writing. Not a journal. A list. Things I did that he never noticed. Made doctor's appointments for his mother. Paid the tax on his bonus when he forgot. Sent birthday gifts to his niece for 5 years. Repaired the front gate 3 times. Wrote his thank you cards during the holidays. Hosted his coworkers for dinner twice when I had the flu. Canceled vacations because he was swamped. smiled in family photos even when they joked at my expense. I filled 5 pages. Tiny, neat script. Then I flipped the page and wrote, "Things I will never do again. Apologize for saying no. Shrink to fit someone else's comfort. Stay quiet for peace that wasn't real. Pay for someone else's disrespect. Pose for a picture I wasn't invited into." I pinned that page to the fridge. Let any future version of myself see it first thing every morning. On Tuesday, Claire and Dina came over. I didn't tell them what had happened in full. Just that he was gone. That I was rebuilding. That I had space at my table now. They brought wine and takeout. We ate at the table that used to be covered in spreadsheets, bills, receipts. Now it held bowls of curry, laughter, and wine-stained napkins. I told stories. Real ones. Ones I hadn't said out loud in years. About the time he forgot our anniversary and brought me gas station flowers, and how I still made him dinner that night. About how he said, "I don't like how you cut your hair," and I let it grow out again. About how I once cried in the closet after a fight because he'd mocked me in front of his family, again, and no one said anything. They listened. And then Claire raised her glass. "To Anne," she said, "for taking her seat at the head of her own table." I smiled. Not the practiced one. Not the one I wore when his mother made her barbed comments or his sister called me particular. A real smile. We clinked glasses. This was family, I thought. Not the one you're born into. Not the one you marry into. But the one that shows up, brings wine, and tells you that your garlic is perfect even though you burned it a little. At the end of the night, Claire hugged me tight and whispered, "You're going to be more than okay." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. After they left, I walked through the house again. Each room felt like a small country I'd reclaimed after war. There were scars, marks on the wall where photos used to hang, faint indentations in the carpet where his recliner stood. But those would fade. What wouldn't fade was the ownership. This was the house I built. I paid for it. I cleaned it. I fought for it. And now I lived in it. Alone. Whole. Not waiting. Not invisible. If someone ever asked me what it felt like to take back your life, I would tell them. It smells like garlic and lemon. It sounds like laughter not forced. It looks like a bed you sleep in sideways because you can. It feels like turning on music at full volume and dancing barefoot with no one watching. It tastes like the wine you never used to pour because it's a weeknight. And most of all, it moves like breath, one you didn't know you'd been holding for years, finally released. I stood in the middle of the living room and whispered, "I'm here." Not for him. Not for them. For me. The house didn't echo back. It just stood still. Solid. Quiet. Mine. Friday came with sunlight full and wide and warm, the kind that landed on windows like an apology after too many gray days. I opened every curtain in the house, not to chase shadows, but to let the light in. I was done hiding. Even the walls needed proof I was still here, still standing, still mine. The table was set. Not like for a dinner party, not with formality or pretension, but with care. A yellow table runner I'd never dared to use before. Ceramic plates with chipped edges I refused to throw away. And candles, not the ones Tyler liked, unscented, tall, bland, but ones I chose for myself, sandalwood and citrus, low and warm. Claire arrived first, carrying a bottle of wine and a potted basil plant. "For your kitchen," she said, handing it over like a sacred offering. Living things belong in homes that are healing. Dina followed with a loaf of fresh bread and her laugh already spilling into the hallway. Janet came last, still in scrubs, still smelling faintly of antiseptic and lavender lotion. They stepped in and paused, just for a second, their eyes scanning the house. Noticing what was no longer there. "Where's the recliner?" Janet asked. "Gone," I said simply. Claire smiled, raising her eyebrows. "That's when you know it's real." They didn't ask about Tyler. Not directly. They didn't need to. We ate together at the table that had once been a silent battlefield of tension and taxes. We laughed until our cheeks hurt. The wine flowed. The bread disappeared. The candles melted slowly, dripping down like hours I didn't regret spending. At one point, Claire tapped her glass with her fork and raised it. "To Anne," she said. For finally sitting at her own damn table. Everyone echoed the toast. I didn't shy away. I raised mine too. It wasn't performative. It wasn't forced. It was the kind of gesture you make when you realize you're not apologizing for existing anymore. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one cooking to please, serving to smooth over, or hosting to prove something. This was different. This was communion. Not in a religious sense, but something holier than that, the sacred act of being witnessed. Dina passed me the butter with a grin. Next dinner's at my place, but you're doing dessert again. I can't stop thinking about that lemon tart. I smiled. Deal. Later, when they left, I walked them to the door barefoot, the wood cool beneath my feet. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, the house held a warmth I hadn't felt since the first year we moved in, before we filled it with performance. I locked the door and leaned against it, exhaling. This is what home should have felt like all along. No audience. No scorekeeping. Just a place that held the weight of your full self. I walked back to the dining room, cleared the plates, and left the wine glasses. Let them sit overnight. The world wouldn't end because I let things be imperfect for a night. I stood at the head of the table, the seat Tyler used to claim without question. I pulled it out and sat. Not to take his place, but to take my own. It hit me in that moment. I'd spent most of my adult life being moved aside. At family dinners, always the one to stand up and get the extra chairs. At his office parties, always introduced as my wife, with no name attached. At his mother's events, always the one taking the pictures, never in them. Even in arguments, I was the one to yield first. For peace. For logic. For love. But tonight, with dishes unwashed and laughter still hanging in the corners, I was the frame. The image. The point. And if anyone ever tried to move me again, they'd find there was no empty chair left for them. Not anymore. That night, I lit a final candle and carried it to the bedroom. Not out of ritual. Just because I wanted to sleep with light. I placed it on the nightstand, crawled into bed, and stared at the flame. Soft. Quiet. Steady. I thought about the dinners I'd cooked without being thanked. The events I'd paid for where I was asked to take the group photo but never be in it. The whispered family conversations I walked into too late, the ones that fell silent when I entered the room. I thought about the nickname they'd given me behind my back and the frugal. How they'd turned carefulness into ridicule. How they'd spent my restraint like it was a family inheritance. And I thought about the way Tyler had pulled me out of our life like a weed in the garden of his reinvention, moving me to the margins so he could let her bloom. But I was still here. And the garden was mine now. In the morning, I brewed coffee and sat in the sun-soaked kitchen, barefoot, no makeup, hair a mess. And I was beautiful. Not in the mirror, in the moment. In the act of sitting in my own space, uncurated. I opened my laptop and began organizing the final digital folder, Legacy, rewritten. It included my updated will, the list of people to exclude from any future gatherings, a letter to myself, dated 1 year from now, a document titled, What You Never Owed Them. That last one was blank. I planned to fill it slowly. That afternoon, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name in all caps. Inside, a card. We miss you. Let's talk. No signature. But I knew the handwriting. His sister's. Loopy, wide, always too many hearts over her eyes. I threw it in the fireplace. The flame caught quickly, curling the paper into itself like it had always meant to burn. Later that day, I walked to the market. Bought fresh tulips. Not for guests. For the windowsill. On the way back, I saw a couple holding hands. They looked happy. Young. I didn't feel envy. I didn't feel regret. I felt nothing. Because I wasn't missing anything. I had my own hand to hold. I placed the tulips in a blue glass vase, set them on the windowsill, and stepped back. The house, my house, didn't feel like a waiting room anymore. It felt like a novel with chapters still to write. And I wasn't the footnote anymore. I was the title. He showed up 2 weeks later. No warning. No text. No attempt to soften the landing. Just the sound of tires on the gravel drive, the sluggish slam of a car door, and then his shape through the frosted glass of the front door, familiar and now completely foreign. I opened the door slowly, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted him to feel the weight of it. Like a gate to something he no longer had the right to enter. Tyler stood there in a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans that didn't fit the way they used to. His eyes were sleepless. His jaw unshaven. He clutched a file folder like it might shield him from what he'd done. And, he said. His voice was flat. Not remorseful. Just tired. I figured you'd show up eventually. Can we talk? Without making it a thing. I raised an eyebrow. Without scenes, with paperwork. He blinked. What? I stepped aside and gestured toward the dining room. Sit. Read. We'll talk once you've caught up. He hesitated before crossing the threshold, like he knew the air had changed and he couldn't breathe it the same way anymore. I placed a box on the table. Inside, every receipt, every transaction, every screenshot asterisk T. The internet bill with Haley's name and my account number. The lease agreement forged in my name. The Facebook messages between them, retrieved from a backup he'd never logged out of. And, centered on top, the prenup, highlighted, initialed, notarized. He opened it like it might scream. The silence was exquisite. His eyes moved across the pages, slower now, the reality settling in his shoulders like a weight he couldn't redistribute. He looked older, not just tired, but deflated. As if whatever scaffolding had held up his version of the story was finally collapsing. I was helping Haley, he tried, the words brittle. She's family, she needed. She's your girlfriend, not your cousin. He swallowed hard. Stop calling it charity. You moved her into a luxury apartment. You paid for internet, furniture, wine subscriptions. You let her sign my name like it was a favor. You didn't help her, you kept her. His voice was thin now. I didn't mean for it to go that far. You lived there, Tyler. He blinked. I didn't. You left an electric toothbrush. There's a charger under her sink. There's a second key fob on the nightstand. I traced your card activity. You spent more nights there than here for 7 months. Silence. You lied every day, I said. And every time you stood in this kitchen, pretending to be tired from work, you were really just resting from lying. He didn't deny it. Didn't even defend. Instead, he shifted tactics. The victim pivot. I'll pay you back. I tilted my head, amused. You won't have to. I already did, to myself. He frowned. I froze the accounts. I stopped the payments. I rerouted the investments. You've already been reimbursed. You just don't get to keep the lifestyle. He looked at the house like he was seeing it for the first time, or maybe realizing he no longer had a stake in it. I'll fight this, he muttered. You won't. Because you signed a prenup. It was years ago. And it's ironclad. Proven infidelity. Proven financial harm. It's all in here. I slid the folder closer to him. He didn't touch it. I pulled out his house key from my pocket. Placed it on the table between us like a period at the end of a sentence. I changed the locks. His jaw tightened. I never thought you'd. Really? You called me frugal in front of your family while letting another woman live off my savings. You mocked me, Tyler. In every room, at every dinner, with every whispered lie. His voice cracked for the first time. You used to say I was your world. You were, I said. Now I'm mine. He stared at me. There was something almost human in his eyes, panic perhaps. Or recognition. That look people get when they realize they're not the hero in the story they've been telling themselves. Haley didn't mean to. Don't defend her. She forged my name. She took money that didn't belong to her. She laughed with your mother about me at that dinner in Duluth. I heard the recording. He paled. What recording? There was a mic in the kitchen. From the photographer. They captured everything. Including your niece saying I was lucky to be invited. He buried his face in his hands. Good. Let him finally see what I'd been seeing all along. When he looked up again, his eyes were wet. What do I do now? You start over, I said. But not here. Not with me. And not with anything I built. He stood slowly. Gathered the folder. Left the key. At the door, he turned back. You really won't forgive me? I already did, I said. The moment I stopped paying for your lies. And I shut the door. Not with anger. With finality. The kind that doesn't need to slam to be heard. That evening, I cooked again. Nothing special. Just roasted vegetables and soft bread. Comfort food. Healing food. I sat alone at the table. Poured a glass of wine. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was earned. As I ate, my phone buzzed. A message from Claire. Still thinking about that tart. How's your week? I sent her a photo of the empty keyring on the table. She replied with 3 words, "That's your crown." Later that night, I drafted an email to my lawyer. Attached the PDF labeled Red Folder, the list of charges, $9,800, $1,250, $349, $3,100, $886, and the police report. I cited the prenup clause and requested full title confirmation of the house. Subject line, final separation. No emotion. Just closure. Just clarity. In the morning, the house felt new again. Same walls. Same floor. But the energy was different. Lighter. I brewed coffee. Sat by the window. Watched the sun spill into the space where his recliner used to be. Not a void. Not a loss. Just room. Room for everything that came next. That morning, I woke to quiet. Not silence. That came earlier, those long, stifling silences where I tiptoed around a man who only spoke to correct or dismiss. This was a different kind of quiet. A fullness. A quiet that wasn't waiting for him to walk through the door or for the next lie to shatter the stillness. Just quiet. The sun filtered in through the sheer curtains. I left the window open last night. I wasn't afraid anymore of cold air, of locked doors, of being alone. I stretched. Not just my arms and legs, but all of me. The parts of me that had been hunched for years. Bent to keep the peace. Curled to avoid confrontation. Today, I took up space. I brewed coffee. Made a real breakfast, roasted potatoes, eggs, sourdough with butter. No more counting calories for his sake. No more skipping breakfast because we're running late. The table had 1 plate. 1 cup. 1 glass. Mine. And it was enough. At 9 a.m., Claire arrived, wearing oversized sunglasses and her usual grin. She carried a bouquet of sunflowers and a bottle of champagne. "I know it's a bit early," she said, pushing past me into the kitchen, "but I heard from Dina. She says you officially filed everything with the lawyer. That deserves bubbles." I laughed. "You're turning my house into a French cafe." "That's the goal," she said, popping the cork like she'd done it 1,000 times. We toasted at 9:13 a.m., standing barefoot on my kitchen tile. "To choosing yourself," Claire said. I raised my glass. "To every woman told to wait in the hallway after paying for the room," I said. "May we never sit down again unless it's at the head of our own table." She choked on her champagne. "Jesus, Anne. That belongs on a poster." "No," I said. "It belongs in court depositions and divorce hearings." We laughed. Hard. Loud. The kind of laugh that doesn't check volume. After she left, I cleaned up slowly. No rush. No obligation. Just motion. Just life. I pulled the manila envelope from the drawer one last time, the one marked final separation. I reviewed everything with surgical clarity. The spreadsheet of stolen funds. The emails confirming his misuse of the corporate card. The signed prenuptial agreement, notarized and binding. The police report documenting identity theft. The email confirming lease fraud. The letter from HR acknowledging his internal investigation. Attached to the back was a handwritten list titled Things He Took Without Asking. My name. My credit. My silence. My birthday dinner. My seat at the table. My good reputation. My time. My peace. My trust. Below it, another list. Things I took back. My name. My credit. My voice. My house. My future. My narrative. My joy. My strength. Myself. That list was longer. It felt longer. I emailed it all to Sheila, my lawyer. Subject: Red Folder, Final Filing. I poured a second cup of coffee. The power I felt wasn't loud. It wasn't fiery. It wasn't cinematic. It was clean. Clinical. Earned. At noon, the mail came. A thick envelope addressed to and read from Randall and Partners Legal Division. Inside, a letter from the HR department stating that Mr. Tyler Reed has been placed under internal review due to credible reports of corporate card misuse. They offered thanks for my cooperation. No apology. No accountability. But a result. I folded the letter, filed it in the repercussions folder, and smiled. The next morning, I checked the power bill for Unit 312. Still in my name, but inactive. The note read, "Pending disconnection due to lack of payment." Good. Let the lights go out. Let her call Tyler the way he used to call me, panicked, whispering in another room, asking for help with a bill he swore was just temporary. Let him squirm in the cold. Let her learn what it's like to be in a room she didn't pay for, with a man who makes promises he won't keep. I logged into the utility site and removed all saved payment methods. Then I deleted the account. No trace left. At 2 p.m. a message came through Messenger from an old friend of Tyler's, Ben, from his college days. Saw the news. Didn't believe it at first. Just wanted to say I always thought you were the smart one. I didn't reply. Some apologies come too late to matter. That evening I lit a candle, not for romance, not for ambience, but for ritual. For memory. For me. I sat at the table with a blank page in front of me. At the top, I wrote what I learned. And I filled the page slowly. People will take until you tell them no. Love is not proven by what you endure for someone else. Silence is not maturity. It's often just fear in a prettier outfit. Being the bigger person just gives them more room to stand on you. Anyone who laughs at your value will never pay your worth. Your name is not theirs to spend. Being invited isn't the same as being respected. The people who call you difficult are often the ones you've stopped enabling. You do not need to explain why you left the room you were funding. Healing isn't soft. Sometimes it's the sound of locks changing. When I was done, I folded the page, placed it in an envelope, and labeled it, "To future me on the next bad day." Because there would be bad days. But none as bad as the ones I survived silently. This time, I'd have my own words to remind me. The doorbell rang around 5 p.m. I checked the camera before opening it. Dina stood there with a bag of oranges and a bottle of olive oil. "You said you wanted to try that citrus cake," she said. "I found the recipe." We baked. We talked. We peeled zest and cracked eggs and poured oil like it was holy water. When it was done, we sat on the back porch with 2 plates and no napkins. She took a bite, closed her eyes, and said, "This tastes like revenge in heaven." I laughed so hard I almost dropped my fork. As the sun dipped behind the trees, I looked at the garden. The one he never cared about. The one I watered alone. The one that still bloomed. I thought of the woman I used to be, the one who would have said, "It's not that bad," or "He didn't mean it like that," or "It's just easier to let it go." She was gone now. Buried, perhaps, under years of quiet. But in her place stood someone who wasn't afraid to say, "I know exactly what I'm worth. And I'm done giving discounts." That night, as I lay in bed, the house hummed with stillness. A good stillness. A stillness that came after a battle, not the kind with broken dishes or slammed doors, but the kind fought with folders and facts, with receipts and restraint. I turned off the light, pulled the blanket to my chest, and slept without apology.